What's up guys, I'm Zach and welcome back to Workshop Edits. Now today's project is going to be a little bit different. It's in fact not going to be a project. Instead, what I want to do is tell you a little bit about my SawStop. Now if that sounds like something that you won't be interested in, no big deal. I'll go ahead and leave a link up here to a build video that you can check out. If you at all are interested in SawStop or you're interested in learning about my experience with it, then I invite you to stick around. Hopefully it inspires you to get out and make something, learn more about the technology, and potentially invest in your own safety in the future. Now, I just want to start out this video by saying that this video is in no way intended to be a video bragging about the saw that I have. I see this as a video that is purely information based. It is anecdotal based on the experience of me having a SawStop for the past couple of years in this shop. And I just hope that in watching this video, it not only increases your knowledge of the saw, but it also increases your knowledge about table saws, about table saw safety, and hopefully down the road maybe inspires you to save up and invest in something like this, because for me, this is not only the heart of my shop, but I also consider it to be a really big staple in my commitment to woodworking, in my commitment to a side hobby on YouTube, and having the right set of tools to help make the best video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the video. All right, so first and foremost, I have owned a SawStop for a little over 2 years since I basically moved into this space. About 4 years ago, when I first got into woodworking, I experienced my first and only table saw accident. Now, it was minor compared to some of the bigger ones that you see out there, but it was also scary as hell and a huge wake-up call to me in just helping to understand how to go about woodworking and being safe with it. Now, I'm not gonna show a picture, but in essence, I cut off about 2 millimeters of this thumb. Luckily, it's mostly grown back, but I still have a scar. It still hurts to this day, and it is a constant reminder that safety in the shop should be the utmost priority. After that accident, I dove deep down the rabbit hole of safety in woodworking, especially with the table saw. These things are scary as hell to use. They're fast moving, they're heavy, they really can turn on you in an instant, and so that's ultimately where I came across SawStop. Now, after that injury, I really didn't use a table saw. Again, it scared the heck out of me. I didn't want to experience that injury before, and at the time, I didn't have the financial means or the space to purchase a SawStop. So when I moved into this space a little over 2 years ago, this was the first purchase that I made. So the saw that I first purchased when I moved into this space was the 30-inch contractor saw. For me, that was what made sense financially. It also fit this space perfectly, having never actually been in this shop before and really kind of understanding my needs for it. I loved that saw. I used it constantly in every single video since I moved in here. I would swear by it, and I would buy it again if I didn't have the means to fit something bigger in my shop. So having used that saw for over 2 years constantly, what I noticed were a bunch of features about it that I wished I could upgrade. So what I want to do is use this video as a way to tell you why I upgraded and a little bit about this saw and why I'm so excited to have it in my shop. So this is the 36-inch SawStop professional cabinet saw. It has a full cast iron top. It has the T-Glide fence system for it. It has the industrial mobile base. It runs on 240 volt and it has 3 horsepower. And I love everything about this saw. To start off, let's just talk about safety. SawStop is the pinnacle when it comes to table saw safety. Their patented technology for skin contact or electrical signal when touching the blade automatically triggers a brake system that stops in under 5 milliseconds, preventing what could ultimately be a life-changing table saw accident and injury to your hand or other parts of your body. So for me, when purchasing a SawStop, whether it was the first one I bought or the upgrade that I had, it really just came down to safety. This saw is pretty much the heart of my shop. I use it on every project. A table saw is such a versatile tool when it comes to making all different types of cuts. I find myself using pretty much all of the other tools less because of how many things you can do on this. But with increased usage comes the increased risk of an injury. So having that safety feature built into this system is just, it's irreplaceable in my opinion, and it is a huge reason to pay that added premium for this saw. So I love that safety feature. I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times if you've seen any videos about SawStop, but it's worth mentioning it again because that was the ultimate driving factor. Me not only purchasing my first saw, but also upgrading to a bigger professional cabinet saw model. So the first thing I want to talk about is dust collection. So while SawStop does pride itself on having some of the best dust collection in the table saw business, I did find that with the contractor saw, it actually wasn't the best. And that's mostly due to the way that the base of that particular saw is manufactured. Now, when it comes to the professional cabinet saw, the entire base is one giant cast iron piece. It is all enclosed. It has a 4-inch port that feeds directly from the inside where the blade is mounted out the back and mounts directly to my 4-inch dust port system. I've found that when it comes to dust collection overall and having this saw in the shop in the past month, it's really been nice to not have to clean up all of that excess dust that falls out the bottom of the shop. Having better dust collection in your shop ultimately leads to a safer shop, both because of what's scattered on the ground as well as for your lungs. So having that upgraded system was definitely a big driving factor in upgrading to the professional model. The second thing I want to talk about is the cast iron tabletop of this. So if you've seen any of my previous videos where I used the cabinet saw, what you notice is that the base model actually doesn't come with cast iron wings. It's something that you can upgrade, but if you are not somebody who is super knowledgeable about SawStop, professional table saws in general, it's not something that you would really look out for until it's too late and you've already purchased the base model for it. Instead, what it had was these metal wings that had the SawStop logo embossed on both of them. And to me, that always just seemed like a design flaw. For me, I want not only this saw to be as heavy as possible, because the more weight and robustness it has, the more you just feel like it's this big secure tool in your shop that you can really put to the test while doing it safely. And having something that wasn't heavy, wasn't flat, felt like it could bend, to me just seemed like a design flaw. Now you can upgrade it, but it cost about $300. So to me, it just wasn't something that I ultimately wanted to spend money on when I knew ultimately down the road I would upgrade. So now, having had this cast iron top for my table saw for the past month, I could say that my instincts were right, and it's been really nice not only having just something that feels more robust, feels more sturdy and long lasting, but also just having this big flat reference surface that I could use when I'm trying to measure if something is completely flat or straight, or if I've jointed it properly. So upgrading from that metal wing system to having this big cast iron surface has been a really nice thing, and was a big factor in me upgrading from that saw to this professional model. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is mobility. So when I first purchased the 30-inch contractor model, it didn't have a mobile base for it, and that saw weighs about 280 pounds, which isn't something that is overly heavy, but it made it difficult to move. And what I found in having a shop of my size is that the more you can have your tools be on wheels and be really mobile, the more it's just helpful for you to be able to increase the space in certain areas when you need it, in case you want to do something like a big welding project and you just ultimately don't have that space otherwise. So what I did about a year ago was add the contractor mobility base to it. Now that base was pretty good. What it has is 2 fixed wheels on one side and 2 wheels that can spin 360 degrees freely, so that you can, with one foot, step on it and move that saw to where you want in the shop. Now, the limitations of a base like that mean that you are ultimately constantly steering from one direction, and it's not the best type of base that you want. So when I upgraded to this saw, I opted for what is called the industrial mobile base. So that base is actually meant for the SawStop industrial cabinet saw. So it's a little bit bigger than this base, which means it sticks a little bit further out, but they have an adapter kit for this saw. And what that has is a hydraulic system built into it. So with just a couple of pumps of the feet, you can raise the saw up about 1/2 inch, and it has 4 360 degree wheels. So the second you lift that thing up, you can move it in any direction you want. And I find myself constantly using that feature now that I have it, especially when it comes to having an outfeed table that backs up directly to your table saw, to be able to just with literally 1 foot pump that up, use 2 fingers and pull a 500-pound saw 3 feet back from that, and suddenly have 360 degree access to an outfeed table if you're working on a big project, or you just want to have access to this side of the table, has been a really big game changer in my shop, and something that I didn't really think about having until I have it, and now I would never go back. So really, really grateful for the additional mobility that comes with that base. So the one downside, and it's not really a downside, but it's something that's worth talking about because I am talking about the saw and this base in particular, is that I did have to modify my outfeed table on this side in particular to help accept a base that extended out further than both the saw and the fence. And all it did was just adjust how I had my cabinets arranged under it. And it's, in a way, it's not a downside, but it's something you have to take into account if you do currently have an outfeed table that has 4 even sides. But again, having that added mobility has really been a blessing in terms of being able to put a large project on my outfeed table or assembly table and be able to just walk around it and get to it from all sides, and have this saw pushed all the way up to the wall if I want to. Out of the way, I can cover it if I'm painting. Just a very helpful feature, and something I highly recommend if you are looking to upgrade to this saw in particular. So the next thing I want to talk about is the fence system. So on the 30-inch cabinet model that I had what was considered to be the base fence for SawStop. Not a bad fence at all. It's small, it's lightweight, it's something that you can take quickly on and off. The way that it works is that it actually attaches to a railing on the front and back side, and it clamps down to your work surface. That way it can stay nice and straight and make sure that you're using the table saw safely. Something I immediately regretted after having that fence was not spending a couple of extra $100 on purchasing this fence system. So this is the SawStop T-Glide fence. It's pretty incredible, actually. Is it worth the extra money to spend? Yes, it is. The way this one works is it glides along a really large rail system in the front with just one flick of the wrist. This thing just glides very easily over everything. It's incredibly heavy. Actually, when you lift it up, it really feels like it's well engineered. It stays perfectly straight the second you calibrate it. If you are looking to purchase a SawStop, or you're looking to purchase any table saw, a good fence really makes all the difference. Also, not having the railing system on this side means that this fence can actually hang over the outfeed table, and for whatever reason, whether it's a mental thing for me or it's something that actually physically manifests when I'm actually using the table saw, that to me feels a lot more secure, and being able to push material all the way through and keeping it flat up against that fence for as long as possible. So T-Glide fence, highly recommend doing. If you are looking to purchase a saw, like I said, whether it's a SawStop or a Powermatic or a Grizzly, having a really robust, heavy, easy to move, easy to calibrate, nice gliding fence system is something that you should definitely consider sacrificing money for. One other little small thing, and I didn't actually think I would care that much for it, but the measuring guides for this saw actually have these little bubbles so you can actually see the minute measurements a little bit easier. It's really minimal, and again, I didn't really think it was a big deal, but being able to just look straight over and kind of see the bubbled version of the number helps you just get an even more accurate measurement quickly. So SawStop T-Glide fence, highly recommend it. Really love this thing. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of why I upgraded from the 30-inch contractor saw to the 36-inch professional cabinet saw is kind of a two-part thing. One is power and one is cutting capacity. So you can actually purchase the contractor saw with a larger cutting capacity than what I originally did. Again, having done my homework but still being a little bit naive to the benefits of having a larger cutting capacity, it wasn't something that I really considered in my initial research. So I've added 6 inches of cutting capacity because this is the 36-inch model. And just anecdotally, what I found in all of the projects, all of the bigger projects that I had worked on from when I purchased that contractor saw to basically before I upgraded this, was I always wanted to have that cutting capacity slightly bigger than 30 inches. I don't quite know why. Maybe it has to do with the fact that most cabinets are in the range of 33 to 34 inches tall. So suddenly having a big table saw that you can't really make the most use of to make those really precise cuts was just something that kind of annoyed me and was always on the back of my mind. But again, it wasn't really worth it to spend the extra money to upgrade just the fence system on that saw. So, you know, it was something I worked with for 2 years. And again, if you can't afford to upgrade to a model like this because these are expensive table saws, don't let it stop you from getting one. But having that extra 6 inches of cutting capacity, I've basically used on every project since I purchased this, and I love having it. I also really like this melamine extension of the table. Again, this is the 36-inch model. It also comes in a 52-inch model. On the 30-inch contractor model that I had, there was actually a large gap here. For whatever reason, I always just found that kind of counterintuitive, again, to having a big flat table saw surface. So just having this extra board here just makes the saw feel more complete. It makes it feel like I have a bigger work area to do things on. And ultimately, what I sometimes do is actually cover this and use it as an extension of my outfeed table. And then suddenly I feel like I've kind of increased my work area by about 70%. So again, having that big flat surface is something I really like. So the other part of that is power. So the original model that I had with the contractor saw was the 1 3/4 horsepower motor that ran on 110. Now, most garages or workshops or just spaces that you are going to be able to put one of these saws is likely wired for 110 if you're in the US. When I first moved into this shop and it was a blank space, I had my electrician add a single 240 volt outlet, knowing that eventually some of the bigger tools that I might want to add to this shop would run on 240. Thankfully, I did that because this saw does run on 240. It has a 3 horsepower motor, and the reason that I ultimately went with the 3 horsepower motor that runs on 240 instead of upgrading to the same cabinet saw model that has the same motor as the previous one is I just wanted that extra power when it came to ripping down material. One of the material that I mill the most on this table saw is just basic 2x4s, 2x6s from Home Depot. And surprisingly, whether it's because that wood is filled with lots of knots and imperfections, or it's a little bit wet when you purchase from the store, I found that the 1 and 3 horsepower model was constantly getting bogged down trying to cut that, even with a fresh blade on it, even with the fence properly calibrated. And I don't quite know why that was. And it was actually enough sometimes to actually trip up the built-in circuit breaker to the saw that I would have to reset and then start cutting again. Now, having used some basic dimensional lumber in projects in the past month, as well as some thicker hardwoods, I can say without question that having that extra power has been a huge benefit. What I noticed when it does get bogged down is suddenly this saw, even though it has the safety features built into it, it just feels a little bit unsafe. And I don't know if that's a mental thing for me, or I think that because it's getting bogged down, it's more likely to cause a kickback. Whatever it is, having a powerful motor that does run on power that I understand is not readily available to most people, because it really makes my projects feel safer. It makes larger projects feel more attainable. And yeah, I really like having that power. So if you do have 240 in your shop and you are considering purchasing a saw that has a 240 motor versus a 110, I would go for it. I think it's worth the extra money. So I just want to summarize quickly everything that I just talked about, package it up for you so you can get my personal and anecdotal story about having a SawStop. I originally purchased the 30-inch contractor saw. It had the original fence on it. It had the contractor saw mobility base. It had a 30-inch capacity. It had a 1 3/4 horsepower motor, and it ran on 110. I had that saw for about 2 years. I purchased it fully with my own money, and I consider it to be the best purchase that I ever made in my shop. I have no regrets about purchasing it, and I loved it, and I highly recommend that saw. I'll leave a link below to the exact model that I have in this video, just so you can check out exactly what I'm talking about. Having had that saw in my shop and having it serve as the kind of center point of all of my projects, I began to notice quite a few things about that saw that I wanted to upgrade. The first and obvious thing was continuing to have that safety feature built into this. I love building things. I love making things. I see this as a hobby that I want to be doing in a month, in a year, in 5 years when I retire. So to me, safety is the utmost priority. The second upgrade was dust collection. I just wanted something that was a little bit better at it, and this saw does that. I also wanted to have a big cast iron table, adding more weight to the saw, having a really nice machine flat surface, not only as a big, beautiful table saw that I'm spending a good amount of money on, but having it as a flat extension of my outfeed table and being able to measure and make sure the things that I am working on are nice and straight and flat, and it just has made my woodworking overall better. Next thing was upgraded mobility. While I had a mobile base built into my contractor saw, this saw in particular with the industrial mobile base and the ability to move this saw with just a few pumps of your foot in a 360-degree motion around the shop has been a huge added value thing that, unless I had actually made that upgrade, I probably would have noticed how valuable it was to my space. Next thing was the upgraded fence system. So having that upgraded beefy table saw fence is definitely something that I would recommend spending the extra money on, because it's well worth the investment, especially if you see this type of saw as being, a saw that you're gonna have for the next 20 years. The last one was a two-part category. One was just increasing the overall cutting capacity. I found that with a lot of the projects that I was doing, having more than 30 inches of cutting capacity proved to be really beneficial, and I missed having that with some of the larger things that I've built in my house. So I recommend going with a model that offers at least 36 inches in ripping capacity. And then to go along with that was having a more powerful motor. As I understand before, having 240 in your shop is a luxury. I happen to have it because I installed it when I first moved into the garage, and having that 3 horsepower motor that runs on 240 has really helped increase the safety and workflow and efficiency. And if it is something that you have the luxury of having in your shop, then it's a thing that I would definitely consider investing that extra money in. As I end this video, I just want to reiterate that this video was in no way a video meant to brag about the saw that I have. I feel very fortunate to have this saw in my shop. I worked really hard for many years in the woodworking and YouTube community to help save up for a saw like this and get SawStop to help support me in purchasing this saw. This was really just meant to be an informational video for you in case you are interested in purchasing a table saw, whether it's a SawStop or not. Having an understanding of all of the not only safety features that come with it, but some of the larger features that come with having a professional saw that if you didn't have one previously, that you just might not think about. I see this as a 20-year saw, and what ultimately convinced me to upgrade was knowing that this would be a saw that I would have in my shop for hopefully the entirety of my woodworking career. So far, I would give this saw a 10 out of 10. I really don't have any complaints about it, and I look forward to using this saw in all of my videos moving forward. If you did enjoy this video, if you learned anything about it, if you have your own SawStop experiences that you'd like to share in the comments, I invite you to do so. If you want to see me using this saw in all of my future projects moving forward, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. I thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time on whatever it is that I'm building in here, hopefully with this thing. Bye.